Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Tuesday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist David Percy. And up first graphic we have up here is a hazardous weather graphic. And there's a wind advisory out for the eastern Alaska Range area and the shaded areas there, especially through the passes. We'll see the strongest wind gusts as they usually do. And that kicks into effect late tonight, actually about 1 a.m. Tuesday morning tonight, and extends through 6 a.m. Thursday morning. So late tonight through Wednesday night, and that's for winds from the south, give or take there, 25 to 35 miles an hour with gusts to 60 miles an hour. And from there, looking at total rainfall for this afternoon, as it's starting to ramp up again from west to east here in the southwest interior. First, looking at the southwest interior areas are Bristol Bay, Southern Kuskokwim Valley, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island areas, and this is through Wednesday evening, and you can see anywhere from quarter of an inch to maybe an inch out around Tuksuk Bay there, and down toward Platinum, maybe half an inch falling during that time period. Pretty uniform all the way across. Iliamna a little heavier there, could see up to an inch and a half of rain through Wednesday evening. And for king salmon, maybe half an inch to an inch, and up to half an inch around Port Heiden there, and Pilot Point, as well as Igigik. Kodiak Island, heaviest will be on the west side of the island there, with Larsen Bay maybe picking up half an inch, and Akiak could see possibly as much as an inch in the Southern Kuskokwim Valley. Same thing, half an inch to an inch, Sleep Mute and Lime Village. Moving over to south central Alaska, heavier rainfall amounts as is usually the case here, especially when the flow turns south or southeast up to the North Gulf Coast, and that's reflected by the 2 to 3 inch rainfall again through Wednesday evening for the greater Valdez area as well as Whittier, maybe even a little heavier there in some of the normally upslope wetter areas of northern Prince William Sound, Cordova, about 2 to 3 inches. And Seward could see up to 2 inches of rain during that time period. Lighter amounts on the western Kenai Peninsula area, maybe a half inch to an inch, much like they see to the west there over the entire western Kenai Peninsula from Kenai down to Ninilchik and Homer. And Anchorage, Palmer, quarter inch to half an inch, so really not too heavy. And then, of course, on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, western Susitna Valley, rainfall amounts increase there. With Talkeetna could see an inch and a half, as well as Chulitna. Copper River Basin areas looking at lighter amounts, maybe a quarter of an inch, but McCarthy could pick up half an inch or more, even an inch during that time frame. Satellite imagery showing the next system that's going to bring the rain in, already raining across the western part of the state today with some pretty gusty winds as well, with the front reaching almost along the coastline here this afternoon. And after another nice start, here's northern Cook Inlet, south Anchorage up into Palmer area, or well, they had clouds there to start with, but already the clouds back in, some showers developing over the mountainous terrain, Chugach Mountains, even a little few light showers into the Anchorage area, as well as the Kenai Peninsula with the moisture on the increase. You can see that trails out across the southern Bering Sea, and something of a wave forming there west of the Pribilof Islands along that frontal band. Well, that'll be tracking due east. And then another system, another band of moisture spreading rain into the panhandle today, with the heaviest amounts over the central and southern areas, but really kind of a uniform rain pattern there with that system and the one coming into the west there, about pretty much equal, but dry over the eastern interior. Some sun breaks today, enough sun to start to build the cumulus there east-northeast of Fairbanks over toward the border around the Eagle area, and basically dry down into the Copper River Basin, as well as some clearing over the eastern Arctic coastal areas. And on the chart today, that front pushing some rain into the panhandle today. Third of an inch fell at Sitka and Wrangell, and to the west of that system coming into the west coast, rainfall amounts today are about the same, except a little more widespread. Third of an inch falling at Kalskag, Bethel, Nome, areas there, with lighter amounts to the north and lighter amounts down over the Alaska Peninsula, and then much lighter amounts, really not a whole lot of rain with that front, or it's a pretty narrow band of significant rain extending down across the western Aleutians there, with a little bit of moisture there in the westerly flow for the central and eastern Aleutian areas. Otherwise, showers on the increase after the morning sun for Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, and portions of the Kenai Peninsula, though cloudy now, and showers gradually increasing. And for tonight, that system moves through the Panhandle on weekends, kind of slowly moves through. So conditions will be a little more showery to the north, scattering out over toward Yakutat and eastern North Gulf Coast. But periods of rain continue for the central and southern Panhandle, and definitely cloudy skies, mostly cloudy and generally dry over the eastern interior, especially Yukon Flats up to the north slope and the Arctic coast. Maybe some patchy fog along the coastline there, but rain, possibly moderate, gusty winds moving into the southwest coast and interior. Winds will diminish here tonight for the Bering Strait, where St. Lawrence Island, especially after the front moves through. Savunga had a wind gust of 50 miles an hour today, as did Tin City up to the northwest. Scammon Bay had a peak wind gust of 45 miles an hour. Otherwise, it'll stay pretty breezy, 25 gusts, 35 miles an hour, moving to the Kuskokwim Valley, maybe Bristol Bay area, as well as the lower Yukon Valley, with lighter winds off to the east. Periods of rain and fog for the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern and central Aleutians, drying out farther to the west there. And then moving on to the outlook for Wednesday. Again, that weak wave tracks eastward to right over Kodiak Island tomorrow. So IFR flying there with rain, fog, drizzle, pretty persistent throughout the day. Heavier rainfall up along the southern Kenai Peninsula and Prince William Sound area. And as I mentioned, heaviest rainfall looks like it'll be on the west side of Kodiak Island. Stays wet and a little breezy, but not too windy there for the interior areas, western interiors. Holding dry north of the Alaska Range all the way up to the north slope and the Arctic coast. Showers over the Panhandle with maybe some afternoon clearing periods, especially down south as that high pressure builds in. Better chance of some sunshine over the southern Panhandle in the afternoon hours, with probably warmer temperatures if that all works out. But the northern areas will be under the influence of that warm front right across Yakutat, with some periods of rain that extend into Prince William Sound. And along the southwest coast, that low slowly tracks right up to the coastline and slowly weakens, but holds together enough to keep widespread clouds, rain, and fog, especially along the coast there, right up and along that trough axis extending northeastward there, just north of the Yukon River to the eastern Brooks Range. North Slope Arctic coast staying pretty dry, maybe some isolated showers on the west side. Northerly winds on the increase, St. Lawrence Island down across the Pribilofs, and to a lesser extent for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Breezy but sunny for the Adak and Atka area, maybe clearing all the way out to Shimmy and Attu of that high pressure area there. And then for low temperatures tonight, 50s for the Panhandle, 40s and near 50 over southern Alaska, Kodiak Island, the lower 50s, as well as Homer to Seward. Highs tomorrow, not much warmer than the lows, mostly in the 50s, except Kodiak might push 60. Upper 60s, maybe trying to push 70 there around Craig, Kloak, Heidelberg area. Southern Panhandle looking good. Lower 60s north, 50s over the interior, as I mentioned. Lows following morning, 40s to near 50. Southern Alaska, 40s to lower 50s, a little cooler there in the Panhandle. Highs, mid to upper 60s, southern southeast coast, near 60 up towards Skagway and Haines. Highs still in the 50s, mid to upper across southern Alaska, Kuskokwim Valley, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. And up north, about the same as what we've seen, upper 30s to lower 40s for the Arctic coast north slope, 40s south of the Brooks Range, and highs 60, 66 over the eastern interior, maybe some 60s over the north slope or upper 50s there. Otherwise, near 50 out over the Bering Strait. Lows the following morning, not much different in the 40s, most areas, a little cooler north of the Brooks Range, followed by highs still in the mid to 60s there for the Tanana Valley and the Yukon Flats over toward Eagle, 50s elsewhere, 40s and 50s for the Arctic coast. Out to the southwest, lows tonight, 45 to 50, highs tomorrow, 50 to 55. Adak may hit 57 as well as Sand Point. And then the lows the following morning, again, mid to upper 40s along the coastal areas, coolest up around St. Lawrence Island, but not that bad. Mid 40s for the Pribilofs, lower 50s out towards Shimia, otherwise 45 to maybe 50 for the Alaska Peninsula from Adak eastward to the Bristol Bay area, followed by highs mid 50s along the coast, lower 50s over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And moving on to flying weather, you can see the system coming across the Bering Sea, bringing clouds, rain, and with it a huge area of IFR spreading into the central interior, extending back to the eastern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, all the way up to the northwest coast and the Brooks Range, holding VFR there over areas of the Copper River Basin and eastern interior, as well as the North Slope. Marginal VFR to IFR for the southeast coast, IFR spreading into Prince William Sound and Resurrection Bay, and then IFR, southern Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, most of the Alaska Peninsula, spreading into Kodiak Island late, and Cook Inlet as well. And for the afternoon, that area of IFR kind of bucking some southeast winds, it looks like, so staying VFR for northern Cook Inlet into the southern Susitna Valley up to about the Talkeetnas, becoming marginal VFR in the Matanuska Valley, IFR North Gulf Coast, extreme northern panhandle and over toward the border there. Lots of IFR over the western interior and southern slopes of the Brooks Range there, and IFR northern Bering Sea down across the Pribilofs, and then trails off to the southwest and west from Matka Island westward to Shimia. And for the morning Thursday, IFR northern Bering Sea, marginal VFR southern Bering Sea. On Alaska Island, VFR, it looks like a little bit of a break there, otherwise marginal for Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, mostly marginal Kodiak Island, VFR southern Cook Inlet, but IFR northern Cook Inlet, Matanuska, Susitna Valley, right up to the Alaska Range, southern southwest Copper River Basin, North Gulf Coast, northern Panhandle IFR, VFR southern southeast coast, another round of IFR from Adak westward to Shimia and Attu. And marginal VFR for the western Arctic coast and North Slope, VFR on the east side. For the afternoon, kind of a sharp delineation there. IFR for the central and western part of the state, VFR for the east side. And that comes on down into Cook Inlet there, IFR for Kamishak Bay, but Kachemak Bay, VFR, some marginal VFR, southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, and then from about Cape St. Elias eastward, solid IFR, Yakutat down across the panhandle toward Dixon Entrance. IFR Western Alaska Peninsula, westward to Amchitka Island, better, farther to the west. And let's see, passes. IFR, Anatuvik and Adigan, about sums it up for the day on Wednesday. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR, rainy, IFR. Windy, IFR, a little better on the northern entrance, marginal VFR, call it there, but the lowest conditions will be on southern entrance of both Isabel and Isabel and Windy, trending toward IFR throughout the day for Isabel. And from Mentasta, southern approach, lowest conditions, possible marginal VFR, VFR out the north entrance. And Tanita, marginal VFR. Portage, IFR, and Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels 4 to 12,000 feet across the Bering Sea to the Aleutians, about 6,000 feet over the eastern interior North Gulf Coast, 8 to 10,000 feet southern panhandle, and a big area of icing moving in, mostly of the rime variety. Some areas considerable moderate there, as you can see coming a little bit that in along the western Alaska Range and either side of Kodiak Island, that all moving from east to or west to east. Otherwise, light to isolated moderate rime icing, central western interior areas to the northern Bering Sea, and some waning icing possibilities there over the southern or over the southeast coast. Jet stream, upper level low tracking eastward in towards St. Lawrence Island, and to the south of that complex, good westerly jet along and just south of the Aleutians, 115 to 130 knots, blowing across Kodiak Island and diminishing, also diminishing up over interior Alaska. And 9,000 feet, 40 to 55 knot winds over the Bering Sea to the Aleutians, and just south of Kodiak Island, southwest 55 knots there, right over the Alaska Range it looks like, blowing into the Tanana Valley, but diminishing farther to the north. Light winds for the Panhandle, 3,000 foot winds, westerlies 45 knots. There northwest of the Pribilofs, and west-southwest 35 knots into the southwest coast, turn more southerly and diminish over the western interior. Pretty light winds there for the Arctic coast and the eastern toward the border there, and the Panhandle, really light winds at this elevation. Otherwise, with the low developing there near Fognak Island, 40 knot southwest winds there coming into the western Gulf, and a little brisk over Cook Inlet and into Prince William Sound. Turbulence moderate chop, Alaska Peninsula, central eastern Aleutians, and areas of southern Alaska.
Welcome to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service, and joining us today, two more people to talk about the augmented reality sandbox. It's Alana Valaji. She's a University of Alaska Fairbanks mechanical engineering student, helped design and work on the details to make this new type of sandbox there. Thanks for joining us, Alana. Thanks. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator for AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. It's a program funded nationally by the National Science Foundation, right?
Yes.
Okay. Alana, tell us about how you changed and adapted this version of the augmented reality sandbox. It's a really cool tool.
So Gina approached us with 3 goals for this new version of the sandbox. They wanted it to be compact in a light system that could travel around the state. They wanted it to be child-oriented, so we designed the sandbox to have 3 different levels.
Okay.
It's pretty cool. You can have younger children, you can have high school kids. I guess I should say high school teenagers.
Sure.
And then we also designed it to be more marketable, user-friendly, so that this could be seen eventually in classrooms all over the place, all over the state.
Okay. And you had a big hand in this, but this was a team approach, right?
Definitely. It was a really good experience for myself, for George Stevens, who we'll see later.
One of our hand models today. Yeah.
For 2 other members who aren't here today, Cody Klingman and Austin Hunt. And it was just a really good learning experience all around.
Very good. And this is something that is part of your learning experience as well, so you get to check a box in your education.
Yeah,
right?
it's a requirement for seniors of mechanical engineering at University of Alaska Fairbanks.
Very good. Very good. Well, it is a wonderfully inquisitive tool, fun to play with, and I hope to get my hands in the sand here in just a little bit. But it's also part of a bigger program, something that we were talking about a moment ago, AKwx, and that's what Courtney is here to tell us more about. What is AKwx and why do you need a sandbox?
Well, AKwx, as you mentioned, is a national program. We're funded nationally, but we're actually located statewide. We're at UAF, we're at UAA, we're in Southeast at UAS. And she mentioned, you know, taking the sandbox as an educational tool, and that's where I'm an outreach coordinator for the South Central test case.
Okay.
Our focus is on the Kenai watershed, and we are really interested in using these tools like the sandbox to interact with the students down there and get them interested in STEM and also communicate the research findings that we've been having throughout the state.
Okay. And one of those, as George and Eric are kind of changing the contours for us there from UAF to maybe something that resembles a little bit of something more of the Kenai watershed, which is one of your focuses for the study, right? And specifically looking at some of the changes there and how that impacts people and also the salmon.
Yes, it is all of our research is social and environmental.
Okay.
So we have social scientists working hand in hand with our environmental scientists. One of the things we're studying is Upper Russian Lake, and we have a researcher taking sediment cores from that lake. So one of the things we're going to use the sandbox to communicate is how the landscape changed over a long period of time, thousands of years, going from glacier, covered by glacier ice, to being filled with water. And then
that's what they're doing right now.
Exactly. So
live.
So they're moving
cool.
the water around. And then I think they've got some props over there, because we're also going to go a little bit more in depth and explain how the salmon got there.
Okay.
So using
there's
these,
the salmon.
Exactly. Oh, I think there's a few more.
Yeah, we like more salmon in Alaska. More salmon.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really taking the findings from our research grant and just trying to connect with the community and translate it in a really hands-on and exciting way, so people can, you know, interact with us as much as possible.
Well, sure. That makes the learning and the science real and quite literally in your face, rather than just some boring black and white paper that you have to read about. This is something that people can understand better because it's visual and they're touching and feeling and seeing these changes, right?
Yeah, and get them engaged. And then outreach is a huge component, and working with the younger students, and actually even, I mean, working with the UAF graduate and engineering students it's a huge part of our grant, and we really enjoy it.
Oh, it is wonderfully exciting. And so, Alana, you were telling us that this is built to travel.
Right.
And this is built to do more things than version 1. Where can this type of project go in Alaska? And what can it demonstrate?
I mean, we were hoping to eventually get to villages that were harder to reach. that you couldn't necessarily move a whole fixed instrument to, right?
Right.
You need something that can pack up, fit in your truck bed. I mean, one of the most attractive parts of this project is that this was going to be something that was used past our graduation point. You know, this is
Okay.
going to be something that lives in the state for years.
Right, right. Well, it looks like you're well on your way with that. So what are, give me another example. What else can this show us? We've talked about the Kenai River watershed. What's the coolest thing that you've played in the sand with? What's your idea?
Well, I definitely enjoy the props, but we also like kind of building up a giant mound, and if you put some water behind it, you can make a little runway, I guess, and you know, demonstrate the effects of the hydrology by just putting up a dam and letting it all pour right down.
Okay.
And so that could, I think you mentioned it earlier, you could even demonstrate the effects of a tsunami
Right.
or something along those lines.
So it's not just topography, but it's also hydrology
Yes.
and coastal surge mapping and some of the coastal changes that we're seeing here in Alaska, and seeing what the smaller changes in the sandbox might do to kind of a real effect of a slosh or a push of water up on the coast. Tsunami inundation mapping, or even glacial dam release, as some has been demonstrated before.
Yep.
So wow, that's just an impressive thing. That it seems like the possibilities are nearly endless with this, and probably even more ideas that are popping up in your head too.
Yeah, as we speak.
Very cool. All right. Well, if folks want to get more information about EPSCoR, you guys are online. You're on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. AKEPSCOR, right? EPSCoR, Alaska EPSCoR, that is. And again, you guys are funded by the National Science Foundation,
Yes,
so
we are.
more to come from that, and a longer-term study there. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today. Congratulations on your hard work there. This is really fun. And for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and I'm going to go play in the sandbox there. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
And taking a look at the marine forecasts, light variable winds, 5 to 10 knots there for the south coast of the Panhandle, seas at about 5 feet. North coast, south to southeast winds, 10 to 15 knots, seas still 5 feet. Northern Inner Channel, southeast at 20, and for the Stevens Passage area, central inside waters, southeast winds 10 knots, Clarence Strait, northwest at 10. And for the day on Thursday, Clarence Strait, southeast winds 15 knots, call it 20 knots out of the southeast for Stevens Passage, and for Lynn Canal, southeast winds 15 knots. Increase in the winds along the coast, especially the north coast, southeast winds coming up to 30 to 35 knots, and small craft advisories on the south coast for southeast winds at 25 knots. For Prince William Sound, winds will be southeast at 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And for the Middleton Island part of the North Gulf Coast, looking at southeast winds at 20 knots, western North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands, small craft advisory, as well as Kamishak Bay, southeast winds 25 knots with 7-foot seas. Cook Inlet Wednesday, south winds 15 to 20 knots. And for Thursday, winds swing around to the north and northeast for Cook Inlet, about 15 knots, and come down to 15 knots from the east for Kamishak Bay. Barren Islands, southeast winds 20 knots, and east winds 20 knots for the western North Gulf Coast. But Prince William Sound, increase in the winds there, east 30 knots, seas 6 feet. Southeast 30 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast with seas at 10 feet. Kodiak Island for Wednesday, south winds 15 to 25 knots. Small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, west-southwest winds 25 knots. And Bristol Bay, same forecast, southwest winds at 25 knots. Thursday, no change for Bristol Bay. Winds stay southeast at 25 knots, seas up to around 8 feet. And for the Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest winds at 25 knots. And Kodiak Island, lighter winds, call it southwest at 15 knots, or Shelikof Strait, east at 15. And for the eastern Aleutians on Wednesday, west to southwest winds 20 to 25 knots with 8 to 11-foot seas. Small craft advisories in the central Aleutians to Amchitka Island for west winds at 25 knots. Western Aleutians, west winds at 20 knots. And for Thursday, small craft advisories for the central and eastern Aleutians for west to northwest winds at 25 knots with seas running anywhere from 7 to 11 feet. Western Aleutians, southwest winds at 20 knots. For the southwest coast on Wednesday, small craft advisories, southwest winds 25 knots, seas around 10 feet. Pribilof Island, southwest winds at 30 knots with 12-foot seas, and St. Matthew Island looking at 13-foot sea heights with a west wind at 30 knots. St. Lawrence Island, south winds at 20 knots. And for Thursday, for St. Lawrence Island, north winds at 20 knots, but Norton Sound will be looking at southeast winds at 20 knots. And for the Yukon Delta coast, small craft advisories, northwest winds 25 knots. Small craft advisories also for the Kuskokwim Delta coast are southwest winds at 25 knots. And small craft advisories for the Pribilof Islands and St. Matthew Island for northwest winds 25 to 30 knots with seas as high as 12 feet. And up along the eastern and central and western Beaufort Sea coast, east winds on Wednesday at 20 knots with 5 to 6 foot seas, and east winds 20 to 25 knots from Wales to Cape Beaufort. And for Thursday, lighter winds from Wales to Cape Beaufort, generally out of the east, give or take a few degrees there, 10 to 15 knots. Eastern and central Arctic coast, western and central Arctic coast, east winds at 20 knots, become northeast at 15 knots toward Kaktovik, Barter Island to Demarcation Point. For tonight, here comes that front continuing to push inland, kind of slowing down, not moving all that fast from today, but rain will slowly increase Cook Inlet, south central Alaska. Showers Prince William Sound or areas of light rain. Rain for the Panhandle becoming showery to the north. And for tomorrow, Wednesday, that frontal boundary really starts to wash out as it moves into the interior there, but holding together enough with the low center back to the west-southwest flow. Lots of clouds, lots of moisture, lots of rain, especially along the west coast there, and rain south-central Alaska, increasing there with that southeast flow for the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula and western Prince William Sound. More showery with some clearing over the Panhandle, of course drier over the eastern interior and north of the Brooks Range. And for Thursday, cloudy, showery, or areas of rain about sum it up for everywhere south of the Brooks Range, except the eastern interior a little more showery. Look for some clearing with high pressure over the southern Panhandle, but a weak warm front will produce light rain for the North Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle areas. High pressure building over the western Aleutians clears it out from Adak and Atka westward.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.